Hello, everyone. Today at COEVAL Magazine, we're so excited to have the opportunity to speak with Tim Jacobus. He's here with us today. We're going to ask him a few questions about his amazing illustrations. You might know him from his work on the 62 original covers of the Goosebumps series. It's a classic American piece of literature, and I think it's a huge staple to a lot of people's childhoods. So, hello, Tim. How are you?
Hi, Reka. Thanks for having me.
It's nice to have you here. It's such an honor. I wanted to say that I've seen or the Goosebumps books. I think about every year at my Scholastic Book Fair. That's a super American thing, by the way. I know we have an international audience, but I have to say that the books were a little bit scary for me at my age. I think I was like 8. It was primary school. I wanted to ask how you balance and manage that threshold of scariness for an audience of children, of primary school kids. Was that difficult for you?
It actually worked out good because if I talk about this often, I wasn't a horror fan, and I was that kid when I was young who, if I went to the movies, I would go out and grab the phone and call my mom and tell her to come and get me because it was too scary. So I went into it with I had a softer touch already, and I think that helped. Putting stuff out there that wasn't too edgy. And once I started to work with RL, I realized that not only were we trying to make it scary, but there was also a humor element to it. So I knew that I should be scary, and if I can be a little funny or cartoonish, that was the way to go.
I definitely agree. I think you managed that really well. But I do want to ask if there was a draft or anything you drew up for RL that was deemed a little like too spooky. Anything that they shut down because it was too scary. I'm curious.
Nobody said specifically that something was too scary, but the process was that for every cover, long before we went to the final painting, there were three pencil sketches, and each one of them was different. And so, if they may, funny thing is, RL wasn't in on that process. It was discussed with the art directors and the editors, and they would look at them, and then if they said in their meetings that they thought, oh, number two sketch is too scary, let's go with number one. i
Gotcha.
never I never got that feedback. I always knew that there was basically two rules. You could never show a kid getting hurt, and
Mhm.
you could never show red blood. We could show monster blood everywhere as long as it was green. We could go to town, but
That's so
no red
funny.
blood was allowed.
That's so interesting. I have to take a look back at those covers because I could have sworn I've seen red blood, but I guess it's always been purple, green, pink. That's such an
Exactly.
interesting rule. It makes sense
Exactly.
though. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, it was we were trying to, it was more of trying to thrill. The books were geared towards kids 7 years old to 11 years old. So the idea wasn't to blow all your minds and have you sleep in your parents' bed for a week and have your parents write us nasty letters. So the idea was just to get you thrilled enough that you were scared, but again, you weren't scared enough to where you didn't want to go and read the next chapter. So again, it was a little bit of a balancing act.
Yeah. The humor certainly helped with that, I think. And the fact that you're not interested in horror, that's really interesting to me. You have so much work in horror. I think even the work that you've done in your personal portfolio, I've seen like elements of at least like I don't know rock bands that are a little bit of a horror element. I'm not sure how to describe it, but
So
if you
yeah,
had to choose,
when
sorry.
I was first started out, I thought I was gonna do album covers. That was where my head was at when I was in high school, when I was dreaming of maybe at least doing some art for a living. And my work was very fantasy oriented. It wasn't, I wasn't trying to be ultra realistic in anything I did. I was always trying to do the dreamlike environments, but and there was a element of thrill or scare in there, but it wasn't horror. I was never thinking,
Yeah.
you know, hardcore. I wasn't thinking of, Nightmare on Elm Street. I definitely
No.
wasn't thinking along those lines.
No. So what type of, I have to ask, what type of genre is your favorite to illustrate? And would it be album covers? Would it be something else?
Oh, you know, it what's cool is it doesn't really matter because everybody's got an open mind now, where there used to be a a style that would go, that you would look at it and you go, oh, that's a book cover. And then if you did something else, the person would go, oh, that's definitely an album cover, not just by the dimensions, but just by the overall feel and theme. Now everybody likes, the market is pretty open, and anything that I might put on an album cover, I could definitely, switch over and put it on a book cover. So, but
Yeah.
it's been, what's funny is, so like I said, I thought I was going to be doing lots of album covers when I first started, and this is in I got out of art school in the early 1980s, so vinyl was still, a real thing,
Mhm.
and I hardly did any album covers. I may have done two or three. Now in 2024, vinyl has now made
It's
this huge
back. Yeah.
resurgence. Almost every band is putting out some form of vinyl. So I've done way more album covers now, when vinyl isn't even, it's not even the third best way to listen to
I
music. So
know. It's funny how we've come full circle that way. I don't think you could have predicted that.
no, not
Um,
again. There is absolutely nothing in my career that I could have said, "Oh, this is how it's going to go." Absolutely not.
yeah.
None of this makes sense.
Yeah. That's a very true statement for creative people in general, I think.
Yeah,
um,
and that's what makes it fun. Is, well, you're always, you have uh, you have goals along the way that are driving you forward. But to say, oh, I could figure out that in 2024 you and I would be having a conversation on something called a podcast, that
yeah, seriously.
nobody knew what that was.
No.
So yeah, it's that part is really fun.
Yeah, definitely. There's no way I could have predicted that I'd be speaking with you today because I've been such a fan of the Goosebumps books, specifically the art, because I've never really been a huge fan of like reading, but I do love to judge a book by its cover. So,
But yeah,
um,
I think when you're a younger kid and you're in primary school, elementary school, you are judging books by the covers. That's what's getting you to pick it up, and that really was the key to RL and my success. Is I got to get you to pick it up, but once you open the book up, now it's on him, and he's got to keep you hooked all the way through. And if we both do our job, that
yeah,
means as soon as you're done with it, you're looking back again to get another one.
yeah, true teamwork. I want to know a little bit more about your experience as an illustrator because you mentioned you couldn't have predicted any of it. But what are some of the experiences or artists and role models that might have shaped your journey along the way?
So again, hit on it already. Don't have to rehash it. Albums and album covers
Yeah.
were, that was a huge thing when I was growing up. We all were more impressed with somebody's album collection than what kind of car they drove, and
Yeah.
your album collection gave you prestige. And there was a illustrator called Roger Dean, and he did all the album covers for a band, Yes.
Oh, I love
And
yes. Yeah.
he does this very surrealistic creating of other worlds, and that was so I discovered this stuff when I'm 16, and I just, so at the time I'm really early in my ability to draw, and so at the beginning you're drawing a lot of what you can see, And he's the first guy that made me go, nobody cares if you can draw that car exactly. They want to
Mhm.
show them something they can never see anywhere else other than on your illustration. You need to create other places for people to visit. So it was a very that it was just a sea change of thought patterns. Then as I went forward, and at the beginning, I was copying. I was studying and copying his artwork just to go. All right, can I even come close to pulling this stuff off? And yeah, so that really planted the seed that okay, yeah, I can come up with I can I can conjure up places that don't exist, and then I can put either people or characters or creatures in them, and complete the mission. So it was again a little bit of an evolution, but Roger Dean 100% had a huge influence.
I could totally see the resemblance, and it's very subtle. But now that you mention it, I totally see it. His work is incredible as well.
Yeah.
Similar media, yeah. No, like he uses airbrush, I think.
Yeah, I don't know his technique that well. I know he paints much larger than we all think he does, and I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, I would be totally surprised if at some point, maybe not currently, but at some point he wasn't using airbrush. But yeah, back
Mhm.
when I was doing the Goosebumps covers, they were acrylic paintings. Digital art didn't exist for
Yeah,
the regular guy. If you worked at a big company, you might have seen digital technology, and it would probably have been a computer as big as my studio that ran it. And so, yeah, when I went to art school, we learned all traditional ways of working, and I found that the using acrylic paints uh, and the combination of brush and airbrush was what worked best for me. I started
yeah,
out doing work on cars and motorcycle tanks, so that's where I first picked up the airbrush because that's kind of what everybody
oh,
did. And then when I then went to art school, I was like, well, I know how to use this thing. And anytime they would, open the project, usually when you did a project, it was your subject matter could pretty much be what you wanted, but there was a technique that they had just spent all week teaching us, and they wanted you to use pen and ink in using this technique and see if that came home. But then every once in a while they would go, all right, this one's an open format, you can use whatever tools you want, and I'd break that airbrush out and
yeah,
added in. So I got pretty prolific with it, and what ended up being uh, interesting, coincidental, ironic is when digital art came along, my work already had a digital art feel to it.
yeah,
So the transition wasn't easy from traditional to digital, but at least I knew that without having much experience, I could see what other people were doing digitally, and I'm going, well, I can make it happen somehow. When I figure out all these stupid tools, I'll figure out how to make the new stuff look like the old stuff.
yeah. I do think I was going to ask you about that actually. That your style, your traditional style, it's so impressively almost like pristine. It looks digital. It looks like digital art. And I wanted to hear your thoughts on the illustration industry as a whole becoming increasingly digitized. Everyone's using Photoshop, Illustrator, whatever tools they have. Do you have like a preference between the two? I'm just curious to know your thoughts there.
Yeah, so of course, I learned traditionally, and at when the idea of digital art started to float up as a thing that other people were doing, wasn't really interested. And then it got to the point where all the book publishers told us, you have here's the time clock starts now. You all have 2 years. You're going to have to learn how to do digital. We will not be accepting uh, traditional art anymore. We want
Wow.
digital art just because there's a speed in production. And so, okay, and I reluctantly agreed. And like there were a lot of guys who were, incredible oil painters and watercolor artists, and they all just said, I'm out. That's not what I came here to do. I did
Yeah.
not have that luxury. I needed to still keep the lights
You
on,
need to
and
pay the bills.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Those bills weren't going to stop coming to the mailbox. So, at the beginning, it was terrible. And, everything I made was really bad. And slowly you start to come around and you figure it out. And, I would say within a year's time, I was able to create something that was acceptable to turn in. I wasn't
Hmm.
pleased with where it was at. It was definitely uh, steps below what I thought I was creating traditionally. Anyway, long
Yeah.
story short, it does all kind of get there. And so once you're then in it, then you go, oh, look at this. There's things I could do digitally that I could never do
Yeah.
traditionally, and vice versa. So they both have their pluses, they both have their minuses. When
Yeah.
you're in production, though, you're not it's not just me. I'm part of a whole big group of people everywhere from the publisher, then the big thing is the printers, and then the whole system. And if I went in the back room and I produced a full color acrylic illustration and I handed it to my printer, he wouldn't know. He would just go, I don't even know. I don't know
Yeah.
what to do with so,
That's so true.
uh,
Yeah.
it, so if it's going into production, my standard rule is this: if it's going into production, whether you would like me to do an acrylic painting or not, I'm not, because
Yeah.
everybody else along the way won't know what to do. So we're going to go digital. Now, when I say I'm doing digital art, all of it still starts outside the computer. My pencil
Hmm.
sketches are still
Right.
done on the desk. They're still done in pencil with tracing papers and erasers and all that. And then when I get my sketch nice and tight, then I scan it in, and the finish work, the color work, all gets done inside the computer using Photoshop.
Hmm.
I have one of those, Wacom
Oh,
tablets there.
nice. Those are awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm still moving my hands in the way I used to traditionally, although it's on in a digital world. So my art, I think, still has a traditional feel to it because there is a traditional element brought in. Um,
And that's
so
what you were trained in anyway. It's your
right,
background.
and
So,
and
yeah.
and that's where I did so much work before I went digital. That's what So I
Yeah.
kind of had a style, and you're like, well, I don't want to throw this all away and try and invent a new style. So I
No.
worked real hard to get that back, and
Yeah.
so again, now I mean, it's not that you can't tell the difference between what's digital and what's was done traditionally, but it's the you don't mistake in, oh, that looks like Tim's work and I don't know who did
Ye-
that. It
Yeah,
still has the
exactly.
overall feel.
It's
But
consistently you. Yeah.
yeah, but going back to the work, the overall philosophy and work going digital. The funny thing was now, so this was 2003, 2005 when they said, okay, we're all switching. This has to
Mhm.
happen. You got 2 years to do this. And there were lots of people out there saying, this is the death of art. This is the end of
Yeah.
the world. This is it. It's never going to be good again. And that's not really what happened.
No. Yeah.
It got different. That's all that happened, is it got different. So now, today, or in the last, the last 12 months, now AI is raised up
Right.
here, and I'm here. The words are exactly the same.
Yeah.
art is going to die. It's the end of the world. Nothing's going to be the same no matter what happens. Nothing's going to
Yeah.
be the same. But let's be real, let's just sit back and see, is this the end of everything? Probably not.
No. I'm sure people
It's
have been saying that for like centuries. Every time a new
yes.
development
Yeah.
comes up.
Things will change. Hey, listen, when the automobile came, all the people who owned horses were going,
Oh
"Oh, this
no,
is the
yeah.
end of the world." And you're right. There aren't any more horses in the city anymore. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just, things change.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I'm trying not to be like last time. I made sure I didn't settle into that this is the way I do it and I'm not going to do it any different. I don't have that attitude now. So, I play with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I haven't, I've played around with some of the image creation things and I could see, not that I've done it yet, but I can see, okay, let's go back to the 90s and I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you how so I'm going to do a painting and the painting's gonna have lots of horses in it. All right,
Sure.
I need some good horse reference. So
Yeah.
back then social media didn't exist, so I would get in my car and I would drive to the library and I would get books, get all the best books I could find on horses, and then I'd bring that home, and that would be my reference material. So when I'm creating it, I got some good anatomical stuff.
Yeah.
Now,
I
then
remember doing that.
social
Yeah.
media comes along. Yeah, social media comes along and Google. Oh my God, this is so great. I don't have to go driving 3 towns away to get some reference. It's
Horse book, yeah.
fantastic. So I think that's how, at least for my sake, I think that's how I'm going to be using AI. I may plug it in and go, well, what's your idea on this? Like having a collaborator with me
Yeah.
and go, this is what I'm trying to do. What do you got? And I've seen, so you can type in uh, Tim Jacobus Goosebumps AI art. So there,
Oh.
yeah, yes, and some of it is, all of it is, you can go, oh, it's definitely looked at what I've done, but none of it I go, holy smokes, no one's going to
Yeah.
know that that's not mine. You go, yeah, I get
It's a
what it's trying to
computer.
do here. I
Yeah.
would never do that. But every once in a while, there's a really good one where I go, oh, I like the expression on the werewolf's face that they made. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. All right, if maybe I'll lift that. So I could see me using it in that fashion, but I don't ever
Yeah.
see me going, yeah, I'm just going to sign my name to it, click the button, and poof, here comes the new Tim Jacobus AI generated, creature.
Yeah. That must be so strange, being able to actually generate your style through a
Yeah,
computer.
it's
Like, it just
it,
knows.
the fact that
That's
anybody
so
knows
weird.
doesn't
Yeah.
is so weird. I had the luxury of being part of the Goosebumps series and having we've sold whatever the current numbers are, 380 million, 400 million
Yeah.
books. So there's a vast amount of people who at least picked one up and has seen my art. So that's so that's not comprehensible. Like
Yeah.
I can't sit here and go, oh yeah, I can't get my head wrapped around that number.
No,
I,
I can imagine.
I'm happy there's a half a dozen people in my neighborhood who've seen what I do. So the idea that there's people know my art and that there's enough out there that you know people can recognize and go, oh, that looks like a Goosebumps cover.
Yeah.
That's a great compliment. I love that people can look at even my new stuff and say, yeah, that still looks like it, and I hope it does because it's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I think it's really impressive the sheer amount of work that you have out there as an illustrator. Especially, I
Well,
mean, with
yeah, let
Goosebumps,
me
you
help
did
you with that one.
62.
Yeah, let me
Yeah.
help you with that one. I'm old. That's all there is to it. I'm old. And someday you'll be old and you'll have lots of others. Again, I
Yeah.
just been hanging around. They haven't kicked me out yet. I'm
Yeah.
just hanging around long enough and still been given the ability to throw. People are still going, hey, can you do it one more time? Of course I can. So,
Yeah. Well, you've done 62 original covers, and I'm sure a lot of other work in the Goosebumps universe. I want to know how you keep each one original. Like each illustration has to be its own thing. Like you've done 62. How do you manage that?
so a lot. So again, a lot of the credit goes to RL. He's the one who's coming up with the theme. So the fact that there's the original 62. I've done somewhere between 115 and 120 Goosebumps covers,
That's so
and
many.
the but to Bob's credit is he's the one who's conjuring up. Okay, this time it's the Scarecrow walks at midnight. Awesome. Okay, we're doing scarecrows.
Okay.
Cool. Next time around, it's the blob that ate everyone. I don't know what that is. Tell me a little more. Oh, it's this giant blob with a tongue sticking out. Got it. All right. So he was the one who just kept coming up with, okay, how about we try this time?
Yeah.
So his imagination totally fueled my imagination.
Mhm.
Then, like you say, now once you're in it a long time, then you go, all right, um, there's things that you want to do that are similar so that you've created a style. So, warped perspective. That was the thing I tried to
Yeah.
do in a lot of the Goosebumps covers. So you never saw anything, a lot of, so if it's a tile floor, the tile floor would bend. If you're in the kitchen, the counter was bent and all the arc, what would normally be super straight lines in a photograph, I'm bending them all, trying to
Yeah.
do my own version of Escher or a fisheye lens or call it whatever you want. I wanted it to be just a little bit off. So even at the age of 10, you're just going, something's not right here. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
off-putting, but it's not scary. Yeah.
right. Yeah, just enough to get like just keep you on your heels. So
Yeah.
warped perspective. Anytime you saw a kid's feet, he was always wearing the Converse sneakers, just to
Oh.
throw them in there. And then it was the use of color, and color became a huge thing. And I spent a lot of time making sure or trying my best not to repeat any of my color theory that I used on the earlier ones. That's all right. We, kind of every once in a while, I would break out the books and kind of spread them around and go, all right, what haven't I done yet that, or that one's good, but if I make the secondary color the dominant color, we can make this look completely different. So
Yeah.
there was a real conscious effort to making sure that things didn't look, nothing looked similar.
Yeah, definitely. I think you had at your advantage the fact that you needed to use vibrant colors, so you had so many more colors to work with. But I also wanted to ask why the Converse? Why did you include Converse in every book?
Well, I mean, so the story is, so back when I was in school. Well, first off, it's not just BS.
Oh, hey, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not, and I didn't put them on because I knew we would be on a podcast.
Yeah,
So
sponsored.
when I was growing up, these were cool sneakers, and they still are, which again doesn't make sense either. Uh, and
Yeah.
so I wore them all the time. And not that I grew up poor, but I grew up in a family where you get one pair of sneakers and they're going to last until the bottoms fall off. And my
Yeah.
sneakers used to smell, and my mom used to complain, and she used to say, "Someday you're going to have to get a real job where you're going to have to wear real shoes." Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
And You're going to have to get a real job and have real shoes. And I was like, well, maybe. And so
They are real
so
shoes.
the stinky sneakers was a theme in my house.
Yeah.
And so what was fun is I would, when Goosebumps started, I would always either the book company would give me books, or I would go to the store and buy them, and I would give one to my mom, and she had a
Yeah.
full Goosebumps collection. And
Oh.
and again, my mom was great, and she was always very supportive and thrilled that I was doing what I wanted to do. And then she would look at the cover, and then if there was Converse sneakers in there, she would roll her eyes and she'd go, "Oh, there's those stinking sneakers." So
Oh, so you're just spiting your
yeah, so
mom.
exactly. So this was all it was all just a giant dig at my mom, and
Oh
just
man. That's awesome. So, out of all of the Converse sneakers and all the covers that you've drawn, which one is your favorite? You have a lot to choose from.
so I'm asked this, often, and it's a thing that changes on a regular basis. It's not that I don't have a favorite. I have ones that I like, and then on a certain day, you go, "Oh yeah, but what about that one? Oh yeah, yeah, that one's really cool." And so I like the ones. The ones that I like the best are the ones when RL told me what the title was going to be, and I didn't know what to do right away.
Ooh,
Again,
yeah.
I referenced Scarecrow Walks at Midnight. That one's like,
Okay.
you can think of it right away. You already know it's
Yeah.
night. It's a scarecrow. Of course, he's going to be in a field.
That's a full
And
sentence. Yeah.
right, yeah, okay, there it is. I have everything that I need. And then as we get down the road and he starts conjuring up, newer, more crazy stuff, um, it got, sometimes I had to just sit there and I just shook my head and went, you know, I don't know. So one, one that I really liked the way it came out was Egg Monsters from Mars, because I
Oh,
was just
wow.
going, all right,
Yeah.
Egg Monsters from Mars, is it giant? No, it's a regular size egg. And well, what's it? Well, it's just kind of an egg. And I'm going, okay, all right. A second one that I always talk about is It Came from Beneath the Sink. And I was like, ooh, that's a good title. What's under
Ooh,
the
yeah.
sink? And he goes, yeah, it's a sponge. I'm going, what?
Oh,
This is,
an evil
this is, what am
sponge?
I doing here? What am I doing here? So those are the ones I like the best because they ended up being cool. But my first initial reaction was just shaking my head, going,
Yeah.
come on, help me out here.
Yeah, I mean, you certainly made the best out of a difficult prompt. I don't know what I would imagine a sponge monster to look like, but you've done it for us, so we don't have to. I want to ask you also about your work outside of the Goosebumps series. I'd like to hear more about the stuff that you've done for different clients or for yourself.
So early on, the reason I was asked to be on Goosebumps is I was working for Scholastic along with multiple other publishers. All the publishers are in the same area in Manhattan. So
Okay.
if you can get yourself back in the day, if you could get yourself into Manhattan, you had access to almost every major publisher there was. So that was that was the whole name of the game. And so I worked with Simon and Schuster and Dell and Daw Books, and a whole bunch of every one of them.
Wow.
At one point, I got a chance to work with, and Scholastic being again a big one that I was working with. And I had worked with them for a couple of years, not on any series work, but just just some kid stuff.
Hmm.
And when Goosebumps came along, I was not busy, and I was kind of standing in the right place at the right time. And they're going, "Yeah, yeah, you might as well. You could do this." But I'm like, I didn't do any horror. They're like, "Yeah, but it'll be fine." And so again, a whole bunch of that. People talk about the element of luck in what they're doing. If I had been busy doing another book cover that week or that month, the project goes to somebody else.
Yeah.
And the fact that I just happened to be not busy, that really played well. Um, so uh, at the beginning, I did a lot of kid stuff. I did mysteries, some murder mysteries.
Nice.
Uh, I did I did these books called Women in Jeopardy.
Wow.
That was I don't know if that was the real name of it, but they would call it that in house. And it was always the same kind of story, like the mom with the kids stumbles onto a crime, and the cops aren't
Ah,
helping her, and she figures it out by herself, and she
yeah.
uncovers and uh, they were very thematic in their, or what am I trying to say? They weren't templated, but the idea was always the same. All our books had the same theme. So it
Yeah.
was some sort of building from a
Okay.
weird angle, either very low or very high. It was always nighttime, and there was always one light on in the building,
Yeah.
and then then down either in the gutter or someplace was a thing, a shoe, a
Uh-huh.
cigarette butt, a doll,
Ah.
a clue
Was that
was
it was a clue for
right.
people?
It was so you would
Oh.
pick it up and go, "Oh, yeah, well, I could tell something's happening here."
Yeah.
So I did a bunch of these books. I can't even tell you how many I did. Maybe 8 or 10 of them. And when Goosebumps came along, they said, "Yeah, there's this series we're going to do called Goosebumps, and the very first book is called Welcome to Dead House. And that stuff you've been doing for the Women in Jeopardy thing, that might work. Something like that might work for that first cover. So if you go back and look at Welcome to Dead House, there we are on the worm's eye
Okay.
view, and there's the doors open, and there's a light on inside, and there's a creepy guy looking out the window, and so like." We leaned into something I had done in the past to get that first cover off the ground. So I don't want to
That's
think that I did tons of the same thing, but every once in a while you would hit on something that was similar. Uh, Now, what's fun? So my Goosebumps years, I did it from '92 until 2002, 2003,
right.
and then I started to do a little bit of everything. Digital
Uh-huh.
art had really taken over. Did a lot more commercial stuff, a lot more advertising things. But now, what's the most fun is that all the people who were the original Goosebumps fans in the '90s are now grown-ups,
Right.
and
Yeah.
they play in bands, and they they're art directors, and they work for ski companies, and all my emails start the same way. Hi, Tim. My name is fill in the blank. I used to read Goosebumps when I was a kid. Now I have this project, and I want you to do some art for me that looks like Goosebumps. And
Awesome.
I get many of those over the course of a week. So
Wow.
everybody who used to be the kid who was reading the books is now reaching out to me when they need me, and I get to do the same thing over again.
So you're getting hired by the kids who read your books. That's
My
crazy.
my old
Yeah.
fans are my new employers.
That's amazing. that's that's so true. I mean, everyone from that era is now pretty old. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
but
my
we're all
oldest.
still like
So
kids inside,
yeah,
right?
yeah. What's cool is, so my oldest fans. So you'd go, they're probably 42. So if they
Mhm.
were 10 in '92 when the first book came out, they would be okay. That makes them, that'll push them into their
Yeah.
40s, their early 40s. Now, but there's a whole bunch of people that are way younger than that, because the books don't leave the schools. They just continue to be there, and new waves of kids keep coming through, and they're
Yeah.
reading them. But what's fun is I see a lot of people when I'm at a convention who are those people in their late 30s and early 40s who now have their own kids who are 7, 8, 9 year olds, and they're turning them on to Goosebumps.
Yeah,
And there's a whole nother generation of kids who are
the
coming up
Goosebumps
reading it.
indoctrination.
Exactly. Exactly. It's a disease. It's a
Yeah,
disease.
yeah, it's the best kind of disease. So, what kind of work do you see from this generation, like going on today, that excites you the most?
What I think is amazing is, so there used to be, uh, again, we'll do the, the old man talking. So when I got into the business, you were most likely going to do something that was print oriented. That was kind of it. Even if you thought about making a movie, it was still, boy, that was still pretty far fetched with
Yeah,
the tools that were available to you. And that's the first thing where the door opened up as we kept moving forward, was all of a sudden you can pick up a camera and, pretty cheap, and you could produce something that was pretty cool on your own without a big budget. Now, the tools every year get better and better and better, and the video stuff, the quality of, of audio and music, and the ability to edit the stuff on the fly, and uh, the imagery that's available to everybody, and the fact that you can collaborate with somebody who's on the other side of the world. Doesn't That's not a hindrance
yeah,
anymore. Like,
yeah,
our whole thing is, if you didn't live down the street from me, we probably weren't going to work together back in the day.
right.
So all these things are just so incredible, and every day you read about a new video editing tool, or again, all this AI stuff that just keeps popping up, and you're just going, I don't know where the end is, but it's just so cool that there is an endless way for people to be creative right now, and
For sure.
that's nothing but good. There's
Yeah,
no, I don't care what anybody said. There's no downside to that, because it's opening it up to more and more people. So
yeah,
that's the. Let me. I'll arc back to something I talked about earlier. So when digital art first came along in that first part of the 2000s, that was the first time in my life that I was ever in a art studio where someone came in who learned how to do digital art, but they didn't know how to draw. They knew how to use all the tools and could create great looking images, but I couldn't hand them a pencil and say, just draw me
yeah,
something real quick. And I
yeah.
remember that being like like, oh my God, there's a whole, the world's opened up now for, like, you used to be, if you couldn't draw, you couldn't be in the art business. Now
Mhm.
there's a new wave of people who have creative minds and have great ideas. Just because they can't draw something with a pencil doesn't throw them out of the market. And
Yeah,
now there's even more tools. So the ability for people to get in and be creative is just way, way more expansive.
yeah.
And people being creative, there's no downside to that.
No, and it's certainly so much more accessible to people to do creative work and get that work out there, even if they're not
Oh,
in New York
you know,
City or LA. Yeah.
yeah, I have book covers, paintings that I did for book covers that are in my attic that I swear 12 people saw. That's it. That
Wow.
now I can do a piece and throw it up on Instagram, and I know that 8,000 people are going to see it tomorrow. So,
Yeah.
from that point of view, and that's all I
That's
want you to
insane.
do. I don't
Yeah.
want to, it's not for the compliment. I just want, get some eyeballs on this thing. I spent some time. Please look at it. After that, I don't care. I don't need any more than that, but just look at it. So,
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. That's another thing I'm sure you wouldn't have predicted at the beginning of your
no,
career.
no, yeah, not even close. And again, that's such a great tool. Like, by the time it was really working, I was kind of established in what I do.
Mhm.
What a great thing for people who are starting out. You
Yeah,
know, you could
certainly.
just
Yeah.
be, you could be that kid in high school who's just killing it. And back in the day, only the people in your high school would know you're creating this cool stuff. Now, if you've
Hmm.
got any social media account and you throw it up there, if it's good, people are going to push it around and
Right.
people are going to see it. And
Yeah.
there's nothing, there's nothing more exciting than that, than getting people to see stuff that you're creating. And
Yeah,
if they say
definitely.
nice things to you too, that's real helpful when you're young.
Yeah. Like and comment. Yeah. No, definitely. I definitely think that it's such a great way for people to get their stuff out there. I know that when I first started drawing, it wasn't the type of thing that I could share with people outside my family, and now it's so easy to do that. But
And that's tougher too. So we'll talk about the flip side of that. It, like you say, at the beginning, we're all kind of vulnerable. Everything that we draw isn't the greatest thing in the world. It's all,
yeah,
it's a work in progress, and we may be comfortable showing our friends and our family, but boy, you got to have,
yeah,
got to be able to
because
strap
it's
on
out
the
there.
safety belt now when you decide to
Yeah,
throw it out there, in the wild, wild west there, and have a whole
yeah,
bunch of people comment on it, because you may not hear what you want to hear. And not that that's the end of the world, but you you might want to be, ready first before you actually, pull the ripcord on that one.
definitely, yeah. Oh my God, yeah. So I think I'm just aware of time here a little bit. I have one more question
Okay.
that I want to ask you. It's a bit of a tangent, but I don't think I could pass up the opportunity. So I wanted to know what scares you the most.
um oh, that's a good one. uh I'm not generally I'm not a somebody who's frightened in general. Um, uh, I've had, all right, I'll talk
I
about
got
this.
you there.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I had to have some eye surgery earlier in the week because I was having problems with my eyes. It's all okay now, but
I'm glad to hear that.
yeah, but
Sorry.
it's that thing where you go, oh, like, if this keeps going, this all will stop at some point.
Mhm.
And the idea that, I'm old enough now to see that, I'm in the fourth quarter of the football game, and
Yeah.
um, there will be an end point, and the fact that things are finite gets a little. It's not that it's scary. It gets just, things become more imperative, and you
Wow.
go, the fact that they fix my eyes, I'm going, oh, that's great. That
Yeah.
makes,
Okay.
I wake up every day now and go, holy smokes, I really couldn't see. Now I can
Yeah.
see. That's cool.
I'm glad you can see. That's important for what you do. I mean,
It's kind of crazy, but there's nobody who goes to the eye doctor and says, "Oh, don't worry about me. I don't really need my eyes." So,
yeah, that's true.
I couldn't really impress upon them that it was special to me. Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
sure, sure. Get out of here. Yeah, it's important to everybody. So it's stuff like that where that, there's a chance that it could go away. And the
Mhm.
fact, but then on the flip side of that, I've been lucky enough to be in the game for so long. My time should have been up a long time ago. Like, it should have, this should have died off. People should have, I did plenty of other series that nobody talks about.
Yeah,
So
that's
the
true.
fact that people still remember, still like, still think, that Goosebumps is something, is really a mind blowing thing. So the fact that it gets to go a little longer and I get to be still a part of it, it's way cool. So I really copped out on what you didn't get what scares the hell out of me. I kind
I
of,
was expecting like
hey, everything's cool.
spiders.
Yeah, no spiders,
Yeah.
nah,
Yeah, the passage
nah,
of time. Like, okay. No, but I'm really happy to hear that you're doing better. And I think it's important also to look at the time you have left is an opportunity to really like
Yeah,
do everything that you've
yeah,
yet to
yeah,
do.
and yeah, and again, I'm not, I'm not, I'm not over the hill yet. I can
Yeah.
see out where the hill is, and but it's still really fun to do this, to create stuff, like all that stuff that used to make me excited when I was 22 still
Hmm.
makes me excited even at this age. It's a different feel, where when I was 22 there was a lot of, holy shit, I don't know if I can really do
Oh
this.
yeah, that's
And
yeah.
I'm way less freaked out, at
Hmm.
this age. I'm like, it may, like, the first few things I put down may not be great, but I don't panic and go, "Oh my god, I can't do this. I'm terrible. I've lost." I don't
Yeah.
I don't fall down that rabbit hole all that quickly, and eventually something rises up, and that is something that I kind of shake my head at, is that, you know does the well go dry? Shouldn't the well go dry? At some point, will I reach in there and hope to pull another one out again, and it won't be there? Because, boy, every time I start something, I'm going, "Oh, okay, there's another one. We got one."
Yeah. No,
So,
I think that's a part of your brain that'll stay.
yeah, again, maybe more mental illness than anything, but it's a good mental illness.
Yeah, no, I think you were really persistent and you were really good at what you did. You're doing the right thing for you. You love your job. I mean, I think it's such a success story, the whole thing. And it's really an honor to be speaking with you today.
Oh, well, I
And
appreciate the invite.
yeah, thank you. It's really good to know all about your process. I've been able to ask all the questions that I was dying to know the answers to. So thank you so much for being here. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, and any last words? I don't know.
Uh, Yeah. No, I don't have any words of wisdom. I'm not that
No.
guy.
Well, it was great being with you. Thank
Everybody
you
go
so
hug
much.
your mom. How about that? Yes.
Yes, that's a great one. Yeah, everybody hug their mother. Thank you so much. This was really, really fun. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.